You may be wondering what the cell cycle is. The cell cycle is the series of events that take place in a cell that cause it to divide into two daughter cells. The cell cycle consists of many different phases that all play a very important role in cell division. 90% of the cell cycle is what is called the interphase. The interphase consists of three phases, G1, S, and G2. Then the cell begins mitosis and cytokinesis. In the G1 phase, the cell grows and cellular contents, excluding the chromosomes, are duplicated. In the S phase, each of the 46 chromosomes are duplicated by the cell. And finally, in the G2 phase, the cell double-checks the duplicated chromosomes for error, making any needed repairs. There are many parts of the cell that all play a very specific and important role in the cell cycle. First, there is the nucleus. The nucleus is the center of the cell and contains all of the cell's chromosomes, which encode genetic information and store DNA. The cell membrane is outside of the cell and is what separates the cell from the outside of its environment, which protects the cell from anything in its outer environment. The cell membrane is made up of many different lipids and proteins. The cytoplasm is the material or protoplasm within a living cell, excluding the nucleus. During mitosis, the spindle fibers are responsible for equally dividing the chromosomes into two daughter chromatids. Centrioles play a role in organizing the spindle fibers. The centromere is what holds the chromosomes together and what allows the chromosomes to evenly divide into two daughter chromatids. Mitosis is a part in the cell cycle in which one cell divides to produce two new identical copies of the cell, which are called daughter cells. Mitosis is a step in the cell division process where the DNA of the cell's nucleus splits into two equal sets of chromosomes. There are four phases of mitosis: the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. In the prophase, the spindle fibers begin to form. The spindle grows between centrosomes as they move apart. Later in the prophase, the spindle fibers begin to organize the chromosomes. The chromosomes become more compact, and the nuclear envelope breaks down, releasing the chromosomes. In metaphase, the chromosomes finally align because the spindle has captured all of the chromosomes. The chromosomes are now ready to divide and lined up at the middle of the cell. In the anaphase, chromosomes break apart and the sister chromatids separate from each other and are pulled apart towards opposite sides of the cell. The centromere that holds the sister chromatids together is broken, allowing them to separate. The microtubules that were not attached to chromosomes elongate and push apart, separating the poles, making the cell longer. The telophase is the final step of mitosis. This is where the cell is nearly done dividing and it begins to reestablish its normal structures as cytokinesis takes place. The cell starts to move back to its original position, just cut in half and perfectly replicated. A checkpoint is a stage in the cell cycle at which the cell examines the internal and external cues and decides whether or not to move forward with a division. The first checkpoint is in G1 and the cell checks for the cell size, nutrients, growth factors, and damage in the DNA, and if all of those things are not regulated, the cell may self-destruct. The second checkpoint is in the G2 phase, and the cell checks for DNA damage and DNA replication completeness. At the spindle checkpoint, the cell checks for chromosome attachment to the spindle at the metaphase plate. You may be wondering why cells divide. There are multiple reasons why they divide. First, for it to grow or repair. Secondly, to create a new organism, to replace dead or worn out cells, and cell differentiation. Cell differentiation is a process in which a cell becomes a more specific type of cell, so that way they all have different functions. If you didn't know, cancer is caused by a tumor, and a tumor is unregulated cell growth and cell division, which is caused by an uncontrolled cell cycle. There are two types of tumor. A benign tumor is not cancerous and will not spread to other tissues. On the other hand, a malignant tumor is cancerous and can spread to other tissues and organs. There are two types of genes that regulate the cell cycle. Proto-oncogenes, think of them as the gas, a group of genes which accelerate cell growth and cell division. Tumor suppressor genes, the brakes, a group of genes that regulate and put the brakes on cell growth and division. If there is a mutation in these genes, that can lead to oncogenes, which can lead to an unregulated cell cycle, which leads to a tumor.